This happened to me about 3 months ago in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm Decker, by the way. I work at the chemical plant there, pulling 12-hour shifts most days. The only time I get any peace is when I take my little boat out before sunrise. That morning I had to be at work by 7, so I left around 4:30 while it was still dark. I remember my neighbor's dog was barking like crazy when I loaded my gear. That dog never barks at me, which was weird, but I figured maybe it smelled something or whatever. My boat's nothing special, just a 14-footer with an old Evinrude motor that sounds like it's dying every time I start it. The water was calm that morning, real calm. I got about half a mile from shore when the motor just quit, completely dead. I tried pulling the cord maybe 20 times, but nothing. My phone showed no bars, which wasn't surprising out there, so I just sat there, letting the current take me wherever. The fog was thick as hell. I couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. I'd been drifting for maybe an hour when I felt something bump the bottom of my boat. Not like a fish or anything, something heavy. I looked over the side but couldn't see nothing in that murky water. Then I noticed this rope. It was thick, black, and covered in tar or something sticky. It was wrapped around my hull somehow. I tried to untangle it, but the damn thing wouldn't come loose. When I pulled on it, I could feel weight on the other end. Heavy weight. The fog started clearing up around 7, and that's when I saw it. About 20 feet down this rope, there was a cooler. One of those big white ones with the thick handles. It was tied to what looked like a cinder block, just floating there under the water. I pulled the whole thing up, which took forever. The cooler was sealed tight with duct tape around the edges. My hands were shaking when I peeled that tape off. I don't know why I opened it. I should have just cut the rope and left it alone. Inside were 3 things: a pair of work boots, still wet, a leather wallet with no ID cards, no driver's license, nothing, just empty slots where cards should be, and a smartphone with a cracked screen that somehow still worked. The phone had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails, all from the same number. The messages were from a woman crying, saying things like, "Please call me back," and "Where are you, Tommy?" The last voicemail was just her sobbing for 30 seconds. I tried calling the number back, but it said the line was disconnected. That gave me chills. About an hour later, a sheriff's boat found me. I flagged them down and handed over everything. The deputy, this older guy with gray hair, took my statement and said they'd look into it. He seemed really interested when I mentioned the voicemails. But here's the fucked up part. 3 days later, I called the sheriff's office to follow up. They told me the phone's cloud storage had been wiped clean. All the voicemails were gone. And that phone number I tried calling, they said it never existed in their system. That night, I decided to sleep on my boat. Sometimes I do that when work's been stressing me out. Around 2 in the morning, I heard another boat motor getting closer. I peeked out through my cabin window and saw this dark boat, maybe 30 feet long, moving real slow with no lights on. I watched it circle my boat twice. Then it came right up to my mooring line. I heard splashing, then the sound of the line being cut. My boat started drifting immediately. The next morning, my mooring line was gone, cut clean through. But I still had that cooler in my cabin. The sheriff's department had only taken photos, not the actual cooler. Now I keep thinking about that other boat I saw earlier that first morning before the fog lifted. It passed by me when I was still drifting, maybe 50 yards away. I didn't think much of it then, but now I wonder if they saw me pull up that cooler. Ever since then, I hear boat motors at night, always around 2 or 3 a.m. They idle past my dock real slow, like they're checking to see if I'm still there. I moved the cooler to a storage unit in Beaumont, but I can't shake the feeling that someone's keeping tabs on me. I stopped fishing before dawn. Hell, I barely fish at all anymore. Sometimes you find things that weren't meant to be found, and the wrong people notice when you do. My name is Rafe. I fish a lot near Biloxi. I am not a writer. I tell it like it was. One July morning, me and my buddy Tucker drove down from Mobile for a quiet day. We liked spots other people left alone. We anchored at a forgotten inlet because the fish were better where others didn't go. The inlet is narrow with old pilings and sandbars. Tucker climbed to the bow and said he'd check the anchor. He dove and did not come up. I shouted his name and jumped in without thinking. I came up coughing. Luis and Jamie, the other guys, grabbed lines and we pulled until our arms shook. The tide shifted. The rotten piling next to us caught the hull and tore our skiff in half. I still hear that snap. The only thing we hauled to the surface was an old rope through a pulley and a splintered board with a child's nylon bracelet on it. Yellow beads, tiny stars, sand packed in the holes. I remember holding it and feeling stupid and sick at the same time. We called Sheriff Lyle from Pascagoula. He was quiet and polite. He told us the inlet used to be where kids dared each other to swim. Years ago, he said. He said no one had been reported missing in a long time. That answer did not help. That same afternoon, a man in a pickup drove the sandbar slow and stared at us. He never spoke. He parked, watched from a distance, then left. His tire tracks were the only marks near the boardwalk. No small footprints. I walked the sand later and kept checking for prints that might belong to a kid. I found tourists' flip-flops, dog prints, nothing else. I kept going back. I wanted something that made sense. I know that sounds dumb. Once I found a crushed soda can. Once a plastic fork. Little things. The inlet gives small scraps like it's teasing you. People in town told small stories too. An old man at the bait shop said he remembered a boathouse that fell in when he was a kid, and kids would dare each other to jump from its roof. Another woman said she used to find tiny toys on the sand and hand them to the church lost and found. None of it proved anything. It only made the bracelet heavier in my hands. I still have scars on my knuckles from the rope. I found myself sitting on the pier watching boats go by and counting the cracks in the pilings. I wake up and the house smells like burned coffee because I left it on the stove. Little things that remind me I'm alive. Always. At home, Boots, my cat, would run across the floor and the boards would creak. I think of that sound when I stare at the bracelet in a shoebox under my bed. I forgot to lock my truck one night after a trip, and I still beat myself up about small mistakes. I should have called for help instead of jumping in. I know that now. People asked why I didn't stop. Maybe I wanted to prove my eyes weren't lying. Maybe I wanted to find Tucker. His sister Marta came once with sandwiches and a face that tried to be brave. She asked if we were sure about the rope and pulley. I wanted to tell her everything I felt, but I couldn't. Saying sorry felt useless. Sometimes I would see that pickup again. Same cap low on the driver's head. He'd drive slow across the sandbar, park a ways off, stare at the pilings, then go. I waved once and he didn't look. He seemed like a man carrying something heavy, but he never said a word. One time, when the boat split, I cursed out loud. Motherfucker. It was the only bad word I said that day. Saying it didn't change anything. The bracelet is still in the shoebox. It is faded and has sand in the holes. I press it sometimes to make the memory real. If you ever fish a forgotten inlet, watch the pilings and be careful with anchors. If someone dives and does not come up, call for help. And if you see a man in a pickup staring at the water, don't wave. Just go home. I tell this story like a friend because I am tired of pretending I understand. Some places keep pieces of other people's mistakes, and they don't always give them back. This happened to me about 6 months ago. I'm Garrett, by the way. I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and I've been fishing since I was like 8 years old. My dad taught me everything I know about it. There's this old pier about 20 minutes outside town that nobody really uses anymore. It's technically private property, but the owner lives in Chicago or something and never comes around. The pier creaks like my grandmother's house whenever you walk on it. But the fishing there is incredible. Bass, walleye, sometimes even northern pike if you're lucky. I'd been going there for about 3 years. Always brought my tackle box, left it in the same spot under this little overhang where it stayed dry. Never had any problems. The pier's pretty isolated, which is exactly why I liked it. No crowds, no tourists asking stupid questions about what I'm catching. One afternoon in late September, I was setting up my gear when I heard voices coming from somewhere below me. At first, I thought maybe it was people in a boat, but the voices sounded muffled, like they were coming from underneath the wooden planks. I got curious. I mean, who wouldn't? I walked to the edge and leaned over, trying to see what was down there. That's when I saw it. There was this makeshift shelter tucked right under the pier. Someone had rigged up a blue tarp between the support beams. I could see the corner of a sleeping bag, some canned food stacked up, and what looked like a notebook sitting on a wooden crate. The voices stopped as soon as I leaned over. It got dead quiet except for the water lapping against the pier legs. I didn't stick around after that, packed up my stuff and left. But I kept thinking about it. Who would be living under there? And why did they go silent when I looked down? 2 weeks later, I went back. I know, probably stupid, but the fishing was just too good to give up. Plus, I figured maybe whoever it was had moved on. I set up in my usual spot and started fishing. Everything seemed normal. My dog Charlie was supposed to come with me that day, but he got into the neighbor's garbage again, and I had to clean up the mess first. After about an hour, I went to get a different lure from my tackle box. That's when I noticed something weird. One of my spoon lures was sitting on top of everything else. I always organize my tackle the same way. Spoons on the bottom, jigs in the middle, everything else on top. But this spoon was just sitting there like someone had been looking through my stuff. I checked the rest of my gear. My bait container was open too. I never leave that thing open because the worms dry out. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but it felt like someone had been messing with my things. Over the next few weeks, little things kept happening. A bobber would be missing. My folding chair would be moved a few inches from where I left it. One time, I found my thermos cap unscrewed, even though I always tighten it because my ex-wife Sarah always complained when I spilled coffee in the truck. I thought about telling my buddy Mike about it, but then I figured he'd just think I was losing it. Plus, I didn't want word getting around that there might be some homeless person living out there. I didn't want to cause problems for whoever it was. But I also didn't want anyone going through my stuff. So I decided to set up a trail camera. I borrowed one from Mike, told him I wanted to see what kind of wildlife was around the pier. I hid it in some bushes where it had a good view of my usual fishing spot. The next morning, I checked the footage on my phone. Most of it was just me fishing, some birds flying around. But around midnight, something happened. This shadowy figure crawled out from under the pier. It was too dark to make out any details, but I could see them going through my tackle box, opening containers, moving things around. Then they pulled out that notebook I'd seen under the pier and started writing in it. When they were done, they left the notebook face down on my tackle box, like it was some kind of message. That night, I moved my truck to a different spot before driving home. As I was leaving, I noticed a scrap of blue tarp caught on the fence near the parking area. Same exact color as the tarp under the pier. I haven't been back since. Found a new fishing spot closer to town where there's actually other people around. The fishing isn't as good, but at least I don't have to worry about some creep going through my shit and keeping notes on God knows what. Sometimes I wonder what was written in that notebook. But honestly, I don't think I want to know.